Good. Yes. Great. Thank you. Good evening. This is great. I see some new faces and some old faces. I don't mean that you're old. You look old, but familiar faces. I'm sure some of you have seen TED Talks, and I've seen a few myself. And so I was asked to do one. I thought, well, that doesn't look so hard. I figure I can probably do that. And then I read the directions that says, say something awesome and amazing and transform people's lives in 10 minutes. I thought, what if you can't think of anything that's awesome and amazing and transforms people's lives? And you still got 9 minutes. So I was wandering around Tsukiji one night, and I came across this sign, and I said, this is where I was born. I was born in this hospital. And I thought, well, what could be more awesome and amazing and incredible, wonderful than that I was born? Right? That I was, one moment you're not there, the next minute you are there. What's more mysterious and wonderful than that? And that somebody then comes into your life and says, I'm your mother. And takes care of you so that you can live, you can survive. And then this other person appears and says, I'm your father. And I'm responsible, and we're both responsible, and that you're not just alone in the world. We're with you. And, and we'll always be with you. And it's not just us, but you're part of a greater love story. You're part of families. You have a whole family in Japan. And you have a whole family that comes from the other side of the world. And that it's not even just the families, but you're part of a story that's greater than that. You have ancestors. You're part of even something more than that. You're connected to this whole mysterious, wonderful existence that we all have. And that was something that enabled me to live as a child, to get through all the kinds of things that you go through when you're a child and a teenager. And it helped me also. I was able to spend a lot of time reflecting on who I was, why I was here, what my purpose might be. Turned into a strange teenager who thought a lot about who I was. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I could make a career out of this. I kept going to college, one college after another. And I realized that there was something called a psychologist, which was a kind of modern doctor of the soul. And the more I studied, the more people said you can teach. And so I ended up just going through a lot of schooling and being able to be in the position where I was with a lot of young people. And these young people were at particular places like Harvard and Stanford and the University of Tokyo, the kind of places that we tell young people that this is where you should want to be. You should aspire to go to these places. And with a simple formula that if you're successful, you'll be happy. And that's all we want for you, is what parents tell their children. Right? We just want you to be happy. And this is the way to do it. Well, after being at these places for nearly 40 years, I can tell you with a great deal of assurance that the human beings and the young people in these places are no better than human beings than the ones I've met outside of these places. Certainly have more benefits in some ways, are given great privileges because they go to these brand universities. But they struggle as much as anybody else. But they try to act like it's not such a great struggle. At Stanford, we call it the duck syndrome, in which the duck appears to be serenely just floating through life, gliding along without much effort, looking beautiful. But under the surface, it's like that, right? The duck is really, there's a lot going on there to just keep going through life. And that's what a lot of the students are facing, that just having gone to this place of great achievement doesn't bring them a greater sense of meaning or purpose. And in fact, what they get at these places doesn't help them to develop that sense of why they're here beyond just this endless race to nowhere, the next achievement, the next accomplishment, the next successful venture. And some of them realize that something's missing. And they start to look for the meaning of their lives and want to know, why are we doing this? And it's, of course, not just the kids at Stanford. It's kids everywhere. Right? You see this before they get to Stanford. They're already feeling depressed. They're already feeling anxious. They're already feeling overwhelmed by what they're being told. This is the life that you should live. And these are the limited possibilities that you have. And they're starting to already lose hope. Even in these places which we tell young people, you should want to be at these places. Something's going to happen in your life good if you go to these places. The most privileged places, even the city in which I live, Palo Alto, California. 5 kids from the same high school in 1 year walked in front of moving trains right near my house. At least for this one moment, they felt life was not worth living. They didn't want to be in this life, in this world that we adults have created for them. And if they don't reach that point, many of them reach a point of numbness and just saying, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm going to drop out in some way. And I'm not going to engage in this, what you're telling me is this world that I need to be part of. So I start to think, what can I do? I'm just this college professor. What can I do? What do I know about how people transform their lives? How do people learn how to get this desire to live? And I thought I could start with myself, to look back on my own life in as a teenager and as a young adult, trying to figure out why I was here and feeling this sense of disillusionment with life, a sense of being alienated, a sense of being isolated, and a sense of not being connected, of this kind of cynicism about life. But I also went through something that my father called a transformation. He called it a metamorphosis. So it was a beautiful expression of how he saw his son change. And the way I changed is, a lot of things happened, but I've only got a few more minutes, so I'll give you the Hollywood version. So in the Hollywood story, I was in a fire, and I was in my apartment, and I was living in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it was a 3rd floor walk-up, and I was in my apartment like I usually did. I was playing guitar and drinking wine, and I smelled smoke. And so I got up and I went to the door, I opened the door, and there was already this thick black smoke was coming up the stairwell. And I couldn't see the stairs even. And so I just panicked, and without trying to get anything in my apartment, I just ran down through the smoke, and I was able to get through without falling. And I finally got through, and I burst through the smoke, and I was outside in the fresh air. And I realized as I stood there watching the whole building burned down that I had nothing, except I was still clutching my guitar. So I had the clothes on my back and my guitar, but I had this sense, wow, I have nothing now. Everything I've had has been taken away from me, has been burned. And then I realized I had everything because I was alive. I was still alive, and I had my life. And in that moment, I looked up to the sky, and I heard the voice of God. This is the Hollywood story. Okay. So I had been raised Catholic, and I had lots of prayers in my head. And what came to me was the prayer, a very simple prayer. Oh my God, you are here. Oh my God, I am here. Oh my God, we are here. And to me, the you are here meant that I was never going to be in complete control of my life, and that I had to surrender to this mystery, and I had to surrender to what you might call God. I needed to say that I was not able to be the one who could control everything, and that I needed to really embrace this mystery of life. I am here to me meant also that I needed to accept that I was a unique individual. I was here for a particular purpose. And that was what I needed to discover, but to accept who I was, but also to discover what it was that I needed to do in life. What could I give myself and take the responsibility to do with my life? We are here to meant that I was recognized that from the beginning I came here through others. I came here with others. Others have enabled me to live from the time I was born, and that it's only through those connections that I will continue to live, and that's why we're here, to help each other as we stumble and fall, to help each other up so that we can keep going. This was my particular story in the Hollywood version, but I wanted to find out how other people had also transformed their lives. And so I started to ask some of my students and other young people, how did you recover? How did you transform your life when you were at this age? And that's how I discovered the secret. You'd probably like me to tell you the secret? Yeah. People told me stories of being driven to their knees by life. Stories of traumas, wounds, tragedies, cancer, heart attacks, loss of limbs, loss of the loved ones. Stories that made it clear that it wasn't just an easy process of transforming their lives. And I started to talk to more people who had lived and died, some who, no, they weren't dead when I talked to them, obviously, but before that, people who had lived alongside death, grown up with illnesses that were chronic. And they said things like this: by living alongside death, I have learned to truly live. By being aware that my time was limited, I have not wasted any time. And they said things, this was from a friend who was confronting terminal cancer. He said, don't make the universe shout so loud to get your attention next time. So I thought, how can I do something that would help young people before a tragedy, before they're driven to their knees by something in life? And I thought, well, what do I know from my years and years of studying medicine and psychology and working with people who are having difficulties in life? And I came back to this very basic sense of mindfulness and heartfulness. And if you look at this pictograph, the character, you can see very clearly what it means. It's this sense of simply being here, bringing yourself, the kokoro, the heart, your whole self into this present moment and being alive. Being alive right now and in every moment. It's a very simple thing. And I think my dog does it as well as any person I've ever known. But if you look in my dog's eyes, you can see this sense of he's really there, right? He's awake, he's aware, he's attentive, and he's accepting. This is life, right? And he's right there with you. And I started to develop the idea of, I think of as a storytelling tea house. And a tea house, as some of you know, the basic virtues are peace, respect, purity, and tranquility. But it's also brings other things come into the tea house. So if you look at this little door, you realize that for a samurai to get into the tea house, the first thing the samurai has to do is to get down, right? Because that's a very small door. Right? So they've got to get down on your hands and knees to get into that tea house. And it's a very narrow door, too. So to get in, you've got to take off your swords. So when you get into the room, you're sitting close by with others in a very small space, and you're all equal. And the only person there who's doing anything else is the master, who is only there to serve. So the leader, the teacher, is there in service to the others. And to me, this is a beautiful model for how we can come together. Any kind of time in which we're together, we can approach it with these same kinds of values, with that sense of vulnerability and humility, equality and service. And you can sense that when you do that you can feel beginner's mind. You can feel this sense of newness, of looking at something that we see all the time with a fresh set of eyes. And when you do that, you feel possibilities. You hear so many young people today say they don't feel the possibilities in their lives. And that's what we want them to feel, right? That different, if they have the courage, that they can do things that they really want to do. You also get a sense of ichigo ichie. Literally, this one moment, one gathering, that in any moment, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This will never come again. And this feeling also comes if you have this sense of the storytelling tea house. And you create this sense of a heartful community. The storytelling part is simply that what people have been doing throughout much of human history and every day today in many parts of the world, simply coming together and sharing their stories. I tell you my story, you listen to my story, you tell me your story, I listen to your story, and that's all. It's amazingly healing. We see it over and over again. And you can feel this sense of these three connections that came out in that prayer. How do we connect to something beyond ourselves, the mystery of life? How can we connect to our deepest authentic self, the sense of feeling a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives? And how can we connect with others? How can we have this sense of connectedness, interconnectedness, a sense of compassion for other people? And when you do this, you have this gather together in these ways. I believe it creates what this student called a tiny miracle. A tiny miracle in which you feel this sense of crossing the borders inside yourself, crossing the borders between you and other people, and feeling these connections that we hunger for and that we need to keep going. And we're filled with gratitude for each other and just for being here. And I'd like you to just experience, just for a moment, what this is like with this word of Sawubona. Now, Sawubona is a word from South Africa. It's a Zulu word, which is used for a greeting. But the meaning that's been explained to me is, I see you. And I has this deep sense that I am not just me as an individual that you are looking at, but I am with my ancestors. My ancestors are with me. And you are not just that individual that I see in that body, but you have your ancestors with you too. So it has this mystical sense of seeing beyond just this, what we are seeing with our eyes. And if you look at the root of the word respect in Latin, you see that it simply means to see clearly. So you know that in this moment you can see clearly. If you can see clearly, you are respecting. So the part of the exercise is that you have to look into the other person's eyes just for a brief moment. And of course, there's cultural differences in this about how long people look in each other's eyes. But the point of the exercise is that you make eye contact just for a brief moment, and one person says, "I see you." And the response is, "I am here." And then you switch, and the person says, "I see you." And you respond, "I am here." Okay? So could you just try it? And just to at least one or two people to look at that person just for a moment and say, "I see you." And the other says, "I am here."
I see you. I am here.
Well, thank you for trying, for doing that. This poster was on when my grandmother in Shikoku died 3 years ago at 111. The Buddhist priest said she was 113. But this was on the wall, and I thought this really signified what her life was all about. But it's the sense of let's begin with thanks. And if you look back to how I started, I was talking about the beginning of my life and how important it is for us to simply begin from that place with the sense of gratitude that we've been given this gift of life. And also, if we can end our lives with that same sense of gratitude, then I believe we all will have lived a very rich life. So, thank you very much.